I dedicated this book to my parents, George and Roddy Ward. I feel as though if you were still alive, you would probably be full of mixed emotions about me writing this book. However, the perfect God we serve took you home with him, so you will be able to see the necessity of me writing this book through his eyes. If I could speak to you one last time, I would want to be 7 years old again on that last Saturday morning we lived together as a family. I would let you both know just how much I was hurting and how the things you would say and do in the days and years ahead would not only affect me, but your grandchildren too, as well as all the others who would come to know and try to love me. Despite it all, I love you both very much. October 15th, 2004 and February 21st, 2016 were game-changing days for me. I pray the day I release this book will be a game changer for all who read it and are made to be better. Someone very dear to me once said, try to be a rainbow in someone's cloud. The book is written for the sole purpose of helping someone, even if it's just one person, not to make the same mistakes I've made in life, expecting better results. Everything that has happened to me was not just my parents' problem, but it's a combination of them, me, life, and God's will. I spent most of my life wanting to die. It wasn't until recently that I actually thank God for not listening to me and realizing that everything I went through so far was so I could reach back and help someone else. I'm just one of many that God has chosen to tell my story to the masses, and I thank God for seeing more in me than I saw in myself. I feel as though I have asked for forgiveness from everyone I was supposed to, but the pain I caused for not being strong enough to tell the truth deserves a written apology too. It is my deepest desire that you would read this book with the hopes of making better decisions and getting better results. I'm sure most of you have heard the cliche, common sense is not so common, or better yet, that's just common sense. But have you ever asked yourself what makes something common? For me, life was not common. I found myself making some decisions and doing some things that were destructive to my everyday life. When I talked about dying seemed like the only option, literally, that's what it was for me. But thankfully, God said otherwise. Learning how to live, laugh, and love may sound like a cute saying, but it was and still is a serious statement for me. I hope after reading this book you will find yourself wanting to live again, wanting to laugh again, but most of all, wanting to love again. Definitely get into a place where you like yourself and then fall in love with all that God has created you to be. By sharing some of my most personal stories in life, I hope that you will see yourself in those stories, or perhaps see someone else that you will want to share this book with and help them to make a transformation as quickly as possible. I expect each of you all to not read this and just say it was a good book, but really find yourself seeking God more than before. Perhaps you've never heard him speaking to you, or perhaps you've never felt him in that way I will describe in this book. So it is my deepest desire that you will find yourself in my world for a moment, only to come out expecting better results. While in the process of writing this book, I ran across a container in my garage full of journals that go far back as 1995. As I sat on the floor and read them, I wept as though I was reading the life of another person. I had to make myself stop reading just so I could breathe. Reading those journals reminded me of the promise God gave me 2 weeks before my 50th birthday in 2017. He said that if I would walk in my truth, he would take me places I could not imagine and allow me to meet people I would otherwise never encounter. This has been a great year full of every emotion that you can name. I'm now living my life on another level, thanks to every person who loved me and hurt me. One of my new favorite sayings is, it's lonely, but I'm not lonely. Learning how to come from behind will make you desperate enough to not stop no matter what comes at you, and you learn how to faith it until you make it, instead of faking it until you make it. Last but not least, I send my best love and thanks to God, my parents, my pastor, my daughters, and my family and friends, but most of all to my husband and grandson. It was my husband's tough love that made me believe I could write the book and actually accomplish some things while traveling on this journey called life. It was my grandson's birth that positioned me to believe everyone deserves the truth. I'm so thankful that every time I look at him, I'm reminded I now stand in my truth. I stop here and leave this with you. Hurt people truly do hurt other people, but it's also true healthy people help other people. Everyone must leave a set of footprints when they die. My deepest desire is that my footprints are worthy of someone repeating, prayerfully, my grandson, Kai Douglas Edwards. Title of chapter 1 is My Truth for Your Transformation. You know my name, not my story. You've heard what I've done, not what I've been through. My truth for your transformation actually started as a result of a 25-year lie that I held on to. When I was 25 years old, God had me go to my mom and give her forgiveness. We had a very difficult relationship. My mom was very abusive to me in many ways, most of all mentally. As a young girl, I dreamed of the day I would leave home and never return. I didn't quite understand it since in my mind she should have been asking me for forgiveness. But I've always been just obedient enough to do what an adult, or for that matter, God told me to do in most cases, so I did it. My mom looked at me as if to say, we're not going to have this conversation. And I told her, I'm not here to have a conversation. I'm just trying to do what God told me to do. And I really don't understand it myself. So we went on to have what you would consider a decent adult conversation. She was an awesome grandmother. Everything she wasn't to me, she was to my children. Years later, 25 years later to be exact, God would have me needing forgiveness from my own daughter. You see, I had lied to my firstborn about who her dad was. I was 19 years old, and without placing blame, I can't recall ever seeing truth. So how would I know the consequences of not owning it? At this point, I had not heard of generational curses, but once I did, I quickly applied this matter as a generational curse. Once I gave her life, I began my journey of carrying that lie with me, on me, and in me for the next 25 years. I'm sure you've heard the saying, if you tell a lie long enough, you start believing it yourself. I'm here to tell you that it's true. It took her real dad confronting me, demanding I tell the truth, for me to give in. As a result, as it was, and trust, it was more than difficult. I thank God I did it when I did. I did it when I did. When I told her the truth, she told me she was pregnant. Every time I look at my grandson, I'm always reminded that he now walks in the truth of who he is. It wasn't until I was sitting in a hotel conference room in downtown Houston, trying to learn how to write a book, that God so beautifully spoke to me. As the room grew dark and it seemed as though there was no one in the room but me, he said, you're going to write a book, you're going to name it The Exchange, and you're going to exchange your truth for others' transformation. When you were 25 years old, I asked you to give your mama forgiveness. When your daughter was 25, you had to ask for her forgiveness. I feel like a part of my punishment and blessing was when God told me that I had to go around and share this ugly truth worldwide with others with the hopes of them not making the same mistake, expecting better results. Many, and I do mean many, women have come to me and said this, too, is their story. I can't explain why women lie. I'm only here to tell you why I lied. My relationship with my daughter did not die, but it definitely shifted in many directions I could have lived without experiencing. Hurting her was never my intention, but the end result of me not owning my truth changed us forever. And so, my truth for your transformation is very personal for me. It's like a scar that no vitamin E can remove. Have I not been obedient back then with my mother, surely God would have not been able to allow my daughter to forgive me 25 years later. Although I'm not married to my daughter's father, my first love, please know that it took a lot of grace and mercy from God, most of all, for this to turn out the way that it has. Even now, my daughter has not owned this truth, but God has reassured me that His time, all things will be made perfect. Just like it took me 25 years to own my truth, I might not be around to see when she owns hers. And she said what she learned from this, I can't be revealed to the world until I first see the truth in myself. Most of what I saw took place inside of 7406 Hummingbird. I remember being 7 years old, and it was time to get ready for Vacation Bible School. Back then, it was held in the mornings. My mom asked me where my crayons were that I needed to take with me, and I responded, trembling, that they were left at my grandmother's house. She responded by hitting me so hard I landed on the floor. My dad proceeded to show her how it felt for someone bigger than another person to hit them. He hit her so hard she landed on the floor. The hit came from emotional abuse of words, which most likely was something like, "Your stupid ass always doing something stupid." If you have to ask what is wrong with that, I need to see you in my next anger control class. Violence begets violence. It's all I learned from others. It wasn't until I was in my second marriage that I realized my parents didn't show me everything. For example, the older women of my family seemed to have so much power in relationships, and of course, power looks attractive. So it became second nature for me to try to have this same power without having all the facts. During the first 20 plus years of my life, I saw women in my family curse men out, fight men, and most of all, disrespect men and others. However, what I had to find out the hard way was the part of this madness they neglected to share with me, and I had to experience the results of this so-called power the hard way. As a young wife and mother, I saw nothing wrong with what they displayed in front of me until I came to not like the final results of that power. There is a saying that says, you can't do better until you see better. For me, I needed to hear and see better. That became a result of me tapping into who God created me to be, and not the result of what I have created myself to be. They didn't tell me my husband would find it hard to be loving towards someone who just spent the last hour or so cursing him out in front of the children or in public. No one told me I would destroy the whole house, only to be mad at Walmart because they still didn't carry the same picture frames I once had in my house that, due to my uncontrolled anger, I single-handedly destroyed over and over. They didn't let me see them asking for forgiveness all night or hugging the pillows, crying themselves to sleep with the broken promise it wouldn't happen again, only to let it happen many more times. For a very long time, I thought that these important people in my life were perfect, and life had simply been unkind to them. I never realized that they themselves had made some bad decisions and had not been fully truthful and honest with me about how to make better decisions. They should have known better and shown me the way so that I wouldn't make the same mistakes they made, expecting better or even different results. I'm sure in many cases the men in these situations did do something wrong, but the response they received, especially in front of the children, was never a fair exchange. I heard the word bitch so much that I went to school in the second grade and asked the teacher what it meant. Wow. After being beaten on many occasions, I was directed what to tell my father had happened to me. But on one occasion, I forgot the script. When he asked what happened to my eye, I responded without thinking, "Mom hit me." She was so afraid of returning home, she went and got an apartment. We stayed away from home for over 3 weeks. This is where I learned to run away later on in my life, when she would beat me and my dad was no longer there to defend me. On my last runaway episode, I told my dad that if he had made me return again, the next time I would just get on the highway and let something happen to me. Needless to say, I never went back. By then I was 17 years old, and truly, there was more wrong with me than right at this point. as a little girl, the most heartbreaking time took place one Saturday morning. On the rare occasion that we were all sitting at the breakfast table, we were attempting to eat donuts that my dad just came home with. My mom thought it would be a good idea to confront my dad about something she didn't like, not thinking of the little girl that was sitting there as well. My father, of course, got upset, like two sticks of dynamite, the two of them. He slammed his fist on the table, the sugar bowl and donuts flying everywhere. He then jumped up and started packing his clothes, throwing them in the car like I had witnessed quite often before. The cursing and screaming between them led to the neighbors to call the police. After the police arrived, my dad told them that he was leaving. He asked the police if he could tell me bye. He set me on his knee, kissing my wet face, and promised me that this would be the last time I would witness this. He would not be back. Not knowing how to raise this eighth child of his, he had no idea how long I would hold onto those words. If it was as if I had been sentenced to a life sentence with a woman who had not yet said, "I love you," not even once. No more being woken to a warm towel on my face or a kiss on my forehead or ice down my back. The days of waking up to soft scrambled eggs and a priceless conversation at the table were gone. Now my days were full of food with no love, wake-up times without no humor, and no goodnight kisses. And she says, what did I learn from this? She says, sometimes there's no repeat. You would do better to start from scratch. And when I first started reading this book, all I thought about was how many young kids go through that type of domestic violence on a regular basis. And then she talked about how the women in her family tried to control the men, cuss the men, fight the men. They did everything to these men, but they never told her what the consequences were. And she said without saying that those women were getting beaten for their actions eventually. And then the way it read to me, that's the same thing that was happening to her. Holding the truth from you for 25 years. And then one day out of the blue, they just come and tell you the truth. And now the truth can totally turn my world upside down, because here I am thinking that this person was my father for all of these 24, 25 years. And you tell me in the span of a 2-minute conversation, that's not really your dad is that man. So even though she felt like God probably gave her peace about it, release about it, she still just totally disrupted her daughter's life by giving her that information. Now, don't get me wrong. I agree that the information should be given. I think every child has the right to know who their parents are, good, bad, or indifferent. So I think that was a beautiful thing to tell her daughter, hey, Jack is not your dad. Your real dad is Samuel. I'm just using fictitious names. In the book, she said that her and her daughter's relationship is not where it should be, but it seemed like her daughter may possibly still be processing that. And I just couldn't imagine getting such devastating news after you've lived 25 years believing that one person was supposed to be that person, and now there's somebody else that's saying, nope, this person over here is who your dad is. That is a very heavy secret to keep from somebody. So far, what did y'all think about the intro and a part of the first chapter from the book, The Exchange, or the partial first chapter that I read? So far, she's gotten to the point where the mom and dad have been fighting, and now the dad has decided, I gotta go. When I read, I submerge myself into whatever the story is, and it's like it plays out like a motion picture in my mind. So I'm seeing this young kid sitting at a table. Her and the daddy have banter going back and forth. They're getting ready to eat this breakfast of donuts, and I think she said milk. And the mama picked that moment to confront the dad. And the whole house was totally disrupted. But this child was having a good moment with her parent. And I thought about how often parents say things in front of their children that they should really be the protector of their child's innocence, but they'll do and say things in front of the child to strike out at somebody else, not realizing the harm that they're doing to the child that they're supposed to love and protect.